I have been on this bench long enough to know that people do not always come into court carrying only what the paperwork says they are carrying. On paper, it may be a parking ticket, a broken lease, a red light violation, a bounced check, or some petty civic irritation that can be measured in dollars and disposed of with a stamp. But in real life, people often walk into a courtroom carrying things that do not fit on paper at all. They carry fear. They carry grief. They carry arrogance polished so smooth it looks like confidence. They carry desperation disguised as explanation. And sometimes, once in a while, someone walks in carrying a life so cushioned by wealth and insulation that even the smallest demand for accountability feels to them like persecution. That was what entered my courtroom the morning Isabella Harrington appeared on 3 unpaid parking tickets, totaling $240. Now, let me tell you something. After 35 years on this bench in Providence, very little about a municipal file impresses me. 3 parking tickets on the same block during the same week is not exactly the stuff of legend. It is ordinarily the sort of matter that gets resolved in minutes. You ask a few questions, you impose the fine, you maybe knock something off if the facts justify it, and then you move on to the next person standing before you with a folder and an excuse. But experience teaches you that the smallest files sometimes carry the loudest truths. Not because the dollar amount is large, but because human character has a habit of revealing itself most clearly in moments people mistakenly consider too trivial to matter. Inspector Quinn gave me a look when he placed Isabella's file on the bench. If you have watched me long enough, you know I trust my own instincts. But after all these years, I also trust Quinn's. He is not a dramatic man. He does not gossip. He does not editorialize. And he does not waste my time. When he gives me that little nod, the one that says there is more here than the paper suggests, I pay attention. So before I even called the matter, I knew I was not looking at an ordinary parking case. I did not yet know why, but I knew enough to listen carefully. When the clerk called Isabella Harrington's name, I heard the heels before I saw the face. Sharp, deliberate, expensive steps, the kind that are meant to be heard. That alone told me something. Some people enter court trying not to be noticed. They are embarrassed, frightened, uncertain. Others come in announcing themselves. She was the second kind. She was in her late 20s, elegantly dressed. Every detail of her appearance controlled with the precision of somebody who had long ago learned that presentation is power. Her blazer fit perfectly. Her hair was immaculate. Her posture was not nervous or apologetic. It was rehearsed confidence, the kind that grows in rooms where people have spent years stepping out of your way before you reach them. I gave her the same greeting I give everybody who stands before me. Good morning. How are you today? It was a simple question, but judges learn a lot from simple questions. You learn how people receive ordinary courtesy. You learn whether they think politeness is a mutual exchange or a service they are owed. Isabella looked at me with a very particular expression, and I want to be accurate about it. It was not open hostility. It was something colder, something dismissive. The look of a woman who had already decided that the person speaking to her was an inconvenience rather than an authority. Fine, she said. Just that. Fine. No thank you, no acknowledgement, no attempt to meet the room on ordinary terms. I looked down at the file. 3 unpaid parking citations, all in the same week, all on the same block. I asked her whether the tickets were hers. She said her assistant usually handled these things, and there had been a miscommunication. I have heard many variations of that sentence over the years. My accountant forgot. My husband does this. My office manager misplaced it. My driver misunderstood. A whole ecosystem of people apparently exists to absorb responsibility from those who think direct consequences are beneath them. I told her very gently that whoever usually handled such things, she was standing here now, and we were going to figure it out together. That was when she put both manicured hands on the podium and delivered the sentence that changed the entire room. Judge, she said, I think you should know who my father is before we go any further. Now, people imagine moments like that create instant anger in me. They do not. Anger is not the first emotion. The first emotion is disappointment. Deep disappointment. Because that sentence almost always carries the same invisible second half. It means, before you treat me like everybody else, you need to know why I am not everybody else. It means perhaps we can skip the part where accountability applies in a standard way. It means there is a hierarchy, and I am informing you where I stand in it. I set my pen down and folded my hands. I told her I was sure her father was a fine person, but in my courtroom I was interested in her. She tilted her head just slightly and said, "My father is Governor Harrington." The silence in the room was immediate and complete. Not dramatic silence, not theatrical. The real kind. The kind that falls when everyone present understands that a test has just begun and no one yet knows which way it will go. I heard Quinn shift behind me. I heard somebody in the gallery stop rustling papers. I saw a woman waiting with her own file lift her eyes with that particular sharpness people get when they think they are about to watch the law bend in public. My father came to this country from Italy with very little besides his labor, his dignity, and a stubborn refusal to let either be taken from him. He taught me that real respect is built, not inherited. Real authority is earned, not announced. Real worth cannot be conferred by a surname. I thought of him in that moment. I thought of every person who had stood before me with no assistant, no polished clothes, no powerful parent, and still managed to answer for themselves with more grace than this young woman had yet displayed. And I thought this moment matters. Not because she is the governor's daughter, but because she may have been protected from this exact moment for her entire life. So I asked her whether she understood what those 3 tickets represented. She answered immediately. $240. There it was again. The language of transaction. The assumption that because everything in her world is resolved through management, value must always collapse into price. No, I said, and I let the silence hold just long enough for the word to matter. They represent 3 separate choices. 3 separate days when you parked where you knew you should not, and 3 separate decisions not to deal with the consequences. That answer landed. I could see it land. People think self-reflection always arrives grandly, but it often starts as a flicker, a tiny interruption in the face someone wears for the world. I saw that flicker, so I decided to widen it. I asked her to tell me something about her life, not about her father, about her. That question genuinely surprised her. It is amazing how often people who have been surrounded by power are asked only for the parts of themselves that can be attached to their family name, their title, or their usefulness to somebody else's image. She blinked, and for the first time that morning, she did not look impatient. She looked unprepared. She told me she worked for her father's foundation on youth literacy programs. I will be honest with you, that surprised me. Not because wealthy families do not do philanthropic work. Many do. But because I had already begun building a certain picture of Isabella in my mind, and that detail complicated it. Human beings often do that. They interrupt the simple judgments we are composing about them. And a good judge must allow that interruption. I told her that literacy work was meaningful. Something shifted again when I said that. She said her father expected a lot from her. She had been moving between 3 cities for the past month. The tickets, she admitted, looked bad. She knew that her schedule had been impossible. Then she stopped herself and said it sounded like an excuse. "Busy doesn't park the car," I said. "You do." Quinn made a sound behind me that was very carefully not a laugh. The room softened just a touch. Then the back door opened. Governor Harrington himself walked into my courtroom and took a seat quietly in the gallery. No speech, no entourage crowding the center aisle, no dramatic display. He simply sat down. That mattered to me immediately. He did not stride forward to announce himself, did not pass a note, did not ask for a sidebar, did not interrupt. He sat and watched. Isabella did not know he was there. Her back was to him. And in that moment, I understood something important. He was not here to save her. He was here to see who she would be when she believed she was standing alone. I made a decision not to alert her to his presence. Some lessons cannot be given directly. They have to be encountered honestly. So I asked her another question. When she said I should know who her father was, what had she actually meant? The room went very still again. That question did more work than any lecture I could have delivered. It required her to hear herself, to translate entitlement out of implication and into language. She was silent for longer than before. Then she said quietly, "I think I meant that I'm used to things being taken care of." "And is that serving you well?" I asked. That was the longest silence of the morning. Not hostile silence. Thoughtful silence. You could almost feel the machinery of self-justification, trying to decide whether to resume control or step aside. Then she said something that moved me more than all the governor references and polished heels had irritated me. "No," she said. "Not really." That one answer contained more courage than everything she had said up to that point, because honesty, especially in public, especially for people who have spent years buffered by status, is often terrifying. I looked down at the tickets again. 3 parking violations, $240. An ordinary case made less ordinary by one extraordinary admission. I am used to not handling things myself, and that is not helping me become the person I ought to be. So I made my ruling. I told her she would pay the fines in full. No reduction, because the law still mattered. Accountability does not disappear because reflection begins. But I also asked her to do something else. I asked her to spend 1 day volunteering at the Providence Community Center. Not as Governor Harrington's daughter, not through a foundation, not at a ribbon cutting. As an ordinary person doing ordinary work with ordinary people, shelving, sorting, listening, helping. She looked at me and asked whether that was a sentence or a request. I smiled because that question told me all I needed to know. She had heard the distinction. She understood that I was not trying to humiliate her. I was inviting her into a reality she may not have entered honestly in a very long time. It is a request, I said, because you are not just a case number to me. You are a person, and I think you already know what the right answer is. She said yes. Then she gathered her papers and turned. That was when she saw her father sitting in the 3rd row. She stopped where she was. He rose, walked toward her, and placed one hand gently on her shoulder. He did not rescue. He did not explain. He did not perform outrage on her behalf. He simply stood there as a father who had allowed his daughter to face something real and watched her choose honesty over position. He looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. Then they walked out together. Afterward, Quinn came to my bench and said, "That's going to be on the news." He was probably right. Governor's daughter, municipal court, quiet rebuke. People love a headline. But what mattered to me was not whether it would travel. What mattered was whether it had landed where it needed to land. 3 months later, I received a handwritten letter at the courthouse. Not on foundation letterhead, not on embossed paper. Plain stationery. It was from Isabella. She wrote that she had completed the volunteer day at the Providence Community Center. She had spent the morning sorting books with a retired teacher named Margaret, who came in every week despite arthritis because the children depended on her. Isabella wrote that she had paid the fines, but more importantly, she had been thinking about what I said, about choices, and about how many of her own had been made by habit rather than intention. She wrote that her father had seen the clip from my courtroom and told her I had reminded him why he got into public service in the first place. I read that letter twice, and I thought about something my father used to tell me. He used to say that the world will always offer people ways to become less than themselves. Less humble, less truthful, less grateful, less aware of the labor and pain that make their comforts possible. The job of a decent adult is to resist that erosion, to notice when it begins and step back from it before it hardens into character. That is what I think happened to Isabella Harrington. Not a miracle, not a transformation in one hearing. Life is not that neat, but perhaps a correction, a real moment in which nobody could make the problem go away for her. And she discovered that surviving accountability did not destroy her. It clarified her.